Welcome to Optimal Health Weekly with your host, Steve Adams. This podcast is for highly driven professionals, CEOs, and entrepreneurs who know health is the first wealth. Join us each week for a mix of expert interviews and solo episodes on health topics relevant to your busy life. Let's elevate your health together.
Hey everybody, this is Steve from Tiger Medical and welcome to the Tiger Optimal Health Podcast. And today we have a gentleman named Rob Crate, who I'm excited to share with all of you. He's got an interesting career. He's an author, he's a gym owner, but he's got a really unique angle on helping people who travel a lot to maintain their health and their balance. Rob works as a product specialist in the gastroenterology field across Canada, introducing the latest technology to help Canadian physicians combat colorectal cancer. But the real force of what he does, his passion, is optimizing physical and nutritional health for busy professionals who travel excessively. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Steve. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so you're in London, Ontario, which is right on the border of Michigan, correct?
It is, yes, it's very close. We're one of our taglines for London is halfway between Toronto and Detroit. So we're that midpoint, about 2 hours west of Toronto, 2 hours east of Detroit.
Right, exactly. Yep. Well, I'm actually a native Michigander myself.
Okay.
I happen to live in Texas now, but
a little bit warmer there.
Yeah, we made that drive frequently. I think it was
Did you?
401, I think it is, between Port Huron and Michigan and Toronto. So yeah, that's really cool. So before we get really into the content, just tell us a little bit about you, Rob. You kind of introduce yourself to my audience.
Sure. Yeah. So I appreciate the bio up front. That about sums it up. I've lived in London, Ontario, since the year 2000 now. So I grew up a little bit more northern Ontario. If your audience isn't familiar with the Canadian landscape as well, or even the Ontario landscape,
Sure.
it's a lot of winter, about 6 months of the year where I was born. We're into winter now here in London, Ontario. Southern Ontario is a little bit warmer than where I grew up, but we've still got about 6 inches of snow outside today. At the beginning of December. So it's I love the city of London, based on the landscape. They call it the Forest City. There's a lot of outdoor spaces, a lot of parks. A river runs through it that we call the Thames, just like London, England. And it's a university college town. So it's about 500,000 people during the school year. But it's kind of sleepy for the size of the city. It's not. It's built like a small town, even though the population's big, and so that's what we really like about it here. My wife was born and raised, and so we met in university, and I stayed ever since. We have a 12-year-old daughter who just started, or about halfway through grade 7 now, and I travel a lot for work. So as you mentioned, I'm in the gastroenterology space. I train physicians and nurses on the newest technologies when it comes to endoscopes, camera technologies, the latest studies that have come out with different therapeutic ways of treating and detecting cancer and precancer. And because of that, the specific products that I cover for my company require that I travel basically coast to coast. So as most of your audience knows, Canada is a massive country, and I spend a lot of time on the road and a lot of times in hotels and airplanes. And so that's sort of, I've been in this field for about almost 10 years now. I originally started in gastroenterology in 2015, and my role has evolved a little bit over the years in that sense. But I really started traveling heavily probably about 2018 in a national role. Right through the pandemic, there were times when, in mid 2020, I was like one of 5 people in Toronto Pearson Airport,
which is
2 people
weird,
on a plane. Yeah, it was very weird. Very, very strange to go through that when you travel a lot.
Matrix or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. And been doing it ever since. And so with that has come, an evolution in my perspective on health and fitness and well-being and all that kind of stuff, and the balance that comes along with it. So You know, a lot of my life is spent in the healthcare space, dealing with people with digestive issues and living out of hotels. And so that's sort of shaped what I do every
Right.
day.
Yeah, and you know, there's really there's a couple of models in health. There's the sick care model, which is traditional health, and it has a lot of strong positives because when you do get sick, you need it.
Yeah.
But they're not built. It's an episodic system built on healthcare events like a why am I losing my mind here? The thing you do every 10 years when you're 50, the
Colon
scope. Yeah,
colonoscopy. Yeah.
colonoscopy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had two of them. I don't know why I'm struggling here.
Yeah. You
Um,
you blocked it out. You repressed that.
yeah, I know it's not fun. Actually the procedure is easy. It's the day before that's what stinks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, my point is that then because it's episodic, the system isn't built to help people get ahead of things.
No.
Really, they can highlight it, but then there's the alternative system that is cash pay more typically.
Yep.
It's preventative, that is a process orientation, and the world is trying to figure out how to make those connect, and no one has figured it out yet. But voices like yours are really important because there's a lot of people out there. I'm one of them that I wish you would have been around 15 years ago, but you were in college, probably not knowing what you know now. But
Yep.
you know, that happened to me. I had the honor and opportunity with a couple of great partners to scale across 6 different states, a pretty large geography in the United States,
Hmm.
a chain of pet stores. And I was on the road honestly, about 10 to 13 days a month.
Okay.
And so I know that grind of late
Yep.
flights, your sleep schedule's off, you're tired, so you grab stuff you shouldn't eat.
Yep.
You don't sleep as well in a hotel room typically. So this will be really interesting because a lot of the people that we interact with, both as clients, as people who are kind of thinking about working with my company, they're similar. They have a lot of these challenges. So it's going to be
Hmm.
fun to kind of unpack this. Before we get there, though, tell us a little bit about your family. Oh, you told us about your family, and you also, it sounds like you own a gym.
So it's not a gym actually.
Okay.
It's a nutritional supplement brand. And
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, so I created this. Actually, first I'll back up a second just to one of the other things that you mentioned that
Yep.
I think is important to touch on. The whole I shouldn't say the whole problem. A large problem with our healthcare system being this, treatment of the sick rather than
Yep.
preventative
Right.
medicine. It's a twofold problem that I see day in and day out, and it's very similar in Canada and the US.
Yep.
Although our systems are very different in terms of the structure of who pays
Who
and
pays?
why they pay, um, the systems are built very much the same. So, a lot of people in the States, if they haven't come up here, they assume universal health care, everything's unicorns and rainbows and everyone gets everything free and it's great.
Right.
Now, although our taxes pay for our healthcare, the model itself of who pays and how they pay is based off the US system.
Yeah.
And so it has all the inefficiencies of the US system,
Yep.
coupled with all the inefficiencies of a free healthcare system, a
Yeah.
universal healthcare system.
Yeah. Right.
And so all the incentives for the healthcare practitioner here are based on treating disease, right? And
Yep.
so if there's nothing to treat, there's no money to be made.
Correct. Yep.
And so that is part of the problem. Now, that doesn't mean that all physicians are self-interested and only driven by income, of course, because there are a lot of wonderful physicians
Right.
delivering
No. Yeah.
incredible care. The
Right.
second part of that problem is that you can only, as a healthcare provider, you can only lead a horse to water. You can't force them to drink, right? As the saying goes. And
Yeah.
so often when I'm dealing with these patients who have underlying conditions that are constantly dealing with the gastroenterology space specifically, they're given very clear guidelines by their healthcare providers as to how to change their lifestyle to prevent these things from occurring.
Right.
And often in gastroenterology, 90+% of the things we see are reversible. But it's up to the patient to actually take the advice and take the action. And that's where it exacerbates this problem of treating disease rather than preventing it in the first place, if people aren't going to take the information that's available to them and actually put it into action, right? And so we see that down in the States, and we see that in Canada. It's very similar in both locations. When it comes to the Fight Lab Fitness, which is my brand that I've started, it really came from a point of me educating myself in terms of what I am getting in my diet from day to day, and where my diet differs when I'm at home versus when I'm on the road. Because for those in your audience that travel a lot, they know, like you mentioned, you're tired, you grab a snack, you might be eating at the airport. It's hard to find anything worth eating at the airport. If you're not, proactive in planning it out. But the other problem there is that often people who travel a lot, especially if they work for another company, they've got an expense account. It's easy to expense a couple of beers every time you eat a meal. And there's a certain, especially when you're new, there's a certain appeal to eating whatever you want whenever you want. And you're making poor choices of, burger and fries, instead of maybe chicken and broccoli, right? Yeah. And so all these things sort of combine for those that have a life on the road, to pretty poor health outcomes very quickly, right? And often it gets to the point where all of a sudden you wake up and you go, how did this happen? I gained 30 pounds. I feel like crap every day, etc. And so that's really what happened to me early on in my sales career. And I spent a number of years reading the data, reading the scientific studies, the randomized controlled trials that have been done with different types of diets, but also different types of supplements. And I started to track if I eat an ideal diet at home, in terms of my macronutrient breakdown and all of my micronutrient breakdown. Can I really consume a full, complete, healthy diet in any given day? And how difficult and how expensive is that to do? And as I started to do more and more research, I realized that most people in the Western world, it's impossible. Even if you have a free pick of the nicest whole foods and you have no budget, it's almost impossible to get the proper mix of nutrients in our diet today, with what we have available to us. And so that led me down the path of what supplements should we be taking, what supplements help to aid in health, where does the research really show there are benefits, because the supplement industry, of course, is largely unregulated. And so it's difficult to know, A, what you're getting, and B, whether the information behind what you're getting is really credible. So this was, years and years of trying to streamline my nutrition, my diet, and my micronutrients, and then figure out what I really need. And the journey to start Fight Lab, for example, the company that you had mentioned, it started about a year ago. It's a new company, but it started about a year ago because a specific herbal remedy that I wanted to take, which is a supplement called Tongkat Ali, or Long Jack, which is supported by a number of clinical studies to promote testosterone levels naturally. I noticed that my testosterone levels were not only a little bit lower than they should be, but as I got older, the effects of low testosterone started to take more of a toll on me. I was having less energy. I was getting less strength for the same amount of weight pushed at the gym. My sleep patterns were a little bit off. And so I'm trying to I started looking into natural ways to promote my testosterone that wouldn't require testosterone replacement therapy, which again, it's great for some people, and that may be something I do in the future. But for now, I don't feel I need it, and I wanted to support it, a more traditional way. The research shows that Tongkat Ali, typically at a daily dose of about 400 milligrams, does promote testosterone levels naturally, to bring them back up to a level that you're more accustomed to in your youth, right? And I'm approaching 40 now. I'm not as young as I once was, and this was something that I was looking for. I couldn't find it. And when I did find it, I couldn't find a reliable supply. So when I couldn't find it reliably, I decided to make it myself, and that just grew into a brand of basically everything else that I use myself. But now I'm funding it myself, and I just turned it into a company.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, that's like the classic of the entrepreneur story.
Yeah.
Solve the problem that you couldn't find the solution, so you solved it yourself. And that's why I got into Tiger Medical. It was the same thing. It's interesting. Gastroenterology was basically the doorway to how I ended up where I am. I
Okay.
had 25-year battle with reflux, and I got scoped this way and this way multiple times.
Yep.
You don't have any problems. Just keep taking the purple pill. And I don't want to take the purple pill anymore. And it was getting worse and worse, honestly. And long story short, when I met the doctor who is a partner of mine now, lead guy, he was able to reverse engineer it through my genetics. I don't break down starch. I have a gene marker. My body does not break it down. And so when we removed that from my diet, strictly at first, now I can occasionally have some.
Mm-hmm.
Everything resolved. Like in 4 months, I went off the purple pill, first time in 25 years. And
Incredible.
I've taken a handful of Tums in the last 5 years. And
Incredible.
There was more to my health than just that, but it showed me that the body wants to heal itself. If you get to the root cause, you can solve it. And I'm not blaming anybody in traditional medicine. They're not trained to look at genetic markers and do that reverse engineering. Like this guy's a naturopathic MD. So, so anyway, that was how I got into what I'm doing. I solved my own problem, and then I went, you know what? There's a lot of people like me, but we're all busy. We're traveling. We're doing all this stuff. So what we do is 100% virtual concierge medicine, and it really works for busy people. So I like your story on that. That's really cool. So why don't we start getting into the core of what you do? Obviously that's important too, the supplements, but maybe give us an overarching view of like, what are the core things you need to do to maintain your health while you're a busy road warrior?
Yeah. So a lot of these are I would say basic tenets, but the key is actually getting them done, right?
Right.
A big
Robbins always said, we don't need to know more, we need to master what we know.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's the old adage of, study the same good book 100 times rather than read 100 different books. But there's a couple key things that I have learned that I don't think are negotiable. I never waver on them. So one for me is I defined early on a ratio of protein to calories that never fails for me. And so what I would do early on is I would use any sort of app like MyFitnessPal type of thing to look at the macronutrients of everything that I ate, right? And let's say, for example, just for a very easy to understand example, 100 grams of skinless, boneless chicken breast has about 25 grams of protein in it. Or sorry, 100 calories worth of chicken, right? So if you were to take the 25 grams of protein, divide it by the 100 calories, that's about a 25% ratio of protein per calorie. And you can do that for any food, right? So, if you take 100 calories worth of cheddar cheese, that has about 5 grams of protein in it, and that's a 5% ratio.
Right.
So what I learned early on is if I want to maximize my protein intake and my satiety without overeating, I just keep that ratio above a certain level. And for me, that's 7.5%. So I can eat whatever I want, but as long as the protein content is at least 7.5% of the total calories, I physically can't eat more than about 2,500 calories a day. I just can't do it. Because at that point, I'm up almost 200 grams of protein, and you just physically can't fit that more in your body, right?
Right.
So that was a real good trick for me for being on the road, was just figure out the ratio of protein on everything. And if I keep that ratio up, it's fine to eat. If you want to eat, for me, if I want to eat French fries one night for dinner, it's not a huge deal, as long as I'm counteracting it with enough protein that I don't overeat the French fries, right?
Yeah, and all the carbs and simple carbs and starches and things. Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, I'm at my age, I physically cannot put 2,500 calories in my mouth. Like I feel like I want to throw up. So I try to get 150 calories on about 2,000 calories, 150 grams of protein on about 2,000 calories. So I'm about 7.5%.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly. So I think the exact ratio at 7.5 would be 1,800 calories at 150 grams, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's you're just above that, right? So I for a long time I just stayed above that 7.5% ratio, and everything started to fall into line. The body fat melted off, everything felt more toned,
Yep.
you have more energy, but it's interesting you say you have a hard time eating 2,500 calories. You're in a pattern right now where you're eating properly, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
if you put a bag of Reese's peanut butter cups in front of you, you'd eat 2,500 calories pretty quick, right? And most
Right.
most people, that's what they do. And they're not, I shouldn't say just Reese's, but they're eating highly palatable, highly caloric foods with no protein, right?
Right. Yeah. Right.
And
Exactly.
and I think if more people just understood that protein is the highest linked macronutrient to that satiety, that feeling of full,
Yep.
and they ate their protein first, we would solve a lot of our problems.
It's really simple. Yeah. And
Yeah.
one of our doctors is a Mayo trained doctor. He always talks about try to get as much of your protein as you can in the first half of the day because of how it's broken down.
Yeah.
That also contributes to not snacking at night and all that other stuff because you're satiated, you feel
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
really
and
cool.
if you like a lot of people that I've talked to about my little, my ratio trick, if you just front load the ratio, which is the same concept as your Mayo doctor is talking, front load your ratio so you're at 25-30% early in the day, and then feel free to eat carbs after the sun goes down because you're not going to eat too many of them at that point, right?
Right. Yeah. It's kind of why if I have 2 eggs in the morning, I don't even feel like eating for a long time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's your first non-negotiable. What's your second one?
My second one is my first meal of the day is pre-packed. So I pack every time I go on the road. It's nice and easy to like it's small and compact, but I pack a shaker cup and I pre-pack my protein powder for my first meal of the day. And then when I land wherever I'm going, it's skim milk and raw eggs to round it out. So I have a little baggie and it's got a scoop of whey protein. It's got about 10 grams of inulin fiber in it. It's got about 10 grams of collagen. It's got about 5 grams of creatine in it. And then I also
Yep.
put a little potassium chloride in when I'm on the road as well, because normally I put potassium chloride in my water first thing in the morning.
Yep.
But that goes in there as well. Potassium is one of those, and sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but potassium is one of those
Okay.
nutrients that I cannot, for the life of me, get enough in my diet based on recommended daily allowances. And
Okay.
most people, when they think about hydration, they think sodium. But potassium is just as you'll know, potassium is just as important for hydration as sodium is. Sodium's
Actually, I didn't know that, so I'm
Oh, you
learning.
didn't know that? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So sodium controls the amount of water that is absorbed by the cell, but potassium controls the amount of water that stays between the cells. And so it's your lubricant, whereas sodium is your hydrator, potassium is your lubricant. And we should be getting, as adult males, almost 4 grams of potassium a day.
Hmm.
If you break down what you eat in a day, even if you have a really good diet that is high in potassium rich foods, which are some nuts and seeds, your green vegetables, um, people think bananas are high in potassium. They're higher, but they're not that high. To eat 4 grams of potassium in banana form, I think it's about 12 bananas a day
Oh,
right now. So it's
that's not
almost
bad.
impossible, right?
Yeah.
So I take about 2,500 milligrams or 2.5 grams of potassium just as potassium chloride in my water, um, which is about half a teaspoon.
Yep.
So when I go on the road, I mix that in with my protein powder because I'm not going to have that mixture on the road. Now, keep in mind, if you ever try this protocol, potassium chloride is very bitter. So add something else to it to change the flavor. But that's the only way I've found, and it's cheap. You can get a bag of potassium chloride powder for like $20 on Amazon. It'll last you a year.
Yep. Yep.
But that's something that most people don't think about, and it can really play into your levels of perceived fatigue if you don't have enough potassium.
Ah, okay. Yep.
So that's in there as well. And that powder mixture, protein, creatine, collagen, fiber, and potassium I put it in an individual Ziploc bag for every single day
Yep.
that I'm away, and I bring a
That's your
shaker cup.
breakfast? That's your
That's my
breakfast?
breakfast.
Yep. Got
Yeah.
it.
So then what I'll typically do is, and some people sneer at this, but I put raw eggs in it. I don't mind raw eggs. I will do a cup of skim milk and 3 raw eggs with that protein sort of fiber mixture for my day, shake it up. And my breakfast then is between 55 and 60 grams of protein, for about 500 calories as my first meal every single day while I'm away.
Yep. Yep.
So that sets me up for that front loads my protein and it gets a lot of my nutrients that are required through the day before I even look at a coffee shop menu, for example.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Got it.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So what are some of the other things you teach people about maintaining really your capacity to perform really well while they're on the road a lot?
Yeah, so I think micronutrients are really key as well. There's certain ones that I think that personally I think everybody should take. We're not getting enough magnesium. An omega-3 of some sort, if you can't eat enough fish, is something that I think is really,
Yeah.
really valuable.
Right.
Vitamin D when you're on the road, I think is very important. I
Yep.
take about 5,000 IU a day.
Especially for immune support. Right. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So I take about 5,000 units a day of vitamin D all year round. When you travel a lot, you're often dealing with disturbed sleep patterns, right? And so that can help as well. Something that I think is there's not enough science behind it yet, and I don't know if there ever will be, but it's an interesting thing to look into. If you've never heard of it, there's a company called Human Charger.
Okay.
And this company, it's basically LED headphones. So there's no noise. It's just LED lights that come out of them. But it's UVA and UVB light that's shone through your ears. So they did some studies about 10, 15 years ago that showed that a lot of your circadian rhythm is based on, of course, the UVA and UVB light that comes through your eyes. But they
Right.
proved that the same effects can happen by intracranial light if you shine through your ear canal. It's the light that hits your brain. It's not your eyes. It's the eyes are the tunnel to the brain. So these human chargers had some initial data behind them to show that they help with jet lag, but the data is they need more studies. The data is not great. But for a long time, I used these and I found they help with my jet lag. So I would basically, when I need to get up, if I'm 6 hours behind where I normally am and it's dark,
Right.
I would just pop these in for 10, 15 minutes and it helps you feel like you're looking at sunlight, even though the room around you is dark.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So yeah, that's called human chargers. Again, there's not enough data behind it to really promote the fact that, like, I wouldn't say for sure they work, but I found they helped for me and I used them for years when I was traveling.
Well,
Uh,
what's important that you're saying though is you have to support circadian function and
100%.
having light in the morning before 9 a.m., especially if you're northern hemisphere. In Texas, it's sunny and beautiful out every day,
Yeah.
and most days, so I get plenty of that. But I used to do that when I lived in Michigan. I used a Philips blue light in the morning.
Yep.
Same concept, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And for those of us that are further north, it's harder to do, right?
It
And
is.
sometimes the sun's not out until after we're at work, right? So how do you do that? And for me, that's a big thing when I'm traveling is I have to find that break early in the day. If the sun's not out when I'm going to the hospital, for example, sometimes I'm at the hospital at 7 a.m. The sun's not out till 8:30. Then I
Right,
find that time to get outside. Even if it's in the middle of winter, you take that 15-minute break and you get outside, get some sunlight during the day.
right, yeah.
And that has to be non-negotiable on every work trip, especially for me if I'm changing time zones, because there's no way to reset your rhythm unless you've got that light. So
I agree.
figure out a way to do it and get that done.
Yep.
Then I would say the other biggest thing is physical activity, right? So how do you get that in currently? If you're not doing anything, those of us who travel a lot, we sit.
Yeah.
Sometimes I sit for 6 hours on a plane, and then the exercise that I get is walking from one terminal gate to the other in the airport, right? And it's
Yeah.
terrible. So I think the best thing that you can do is figure out what you can do and don't feel like it's got to be perfect. You don't have to get in a 5 mile run and an hour worth of weights when you're on the road and working 10 hours a day.
No.
But the
Realistic.
big mental shift that got me from constantly missing workouts to being in optimal shape was doing what I can when I can.
Right.
So if at the end of the day, all you've got is 15 minutes before a work dinner with colleagues, do some push-ups and some squats in your hotel room. Go for a walk around the hotel block. Whatever you can get in, get in.
Yeah.
And the big thing that I think a lot of people overlook is the latest studies on longevity and overall cognitive ability later in life are most strongly correlated with muscle size. So if you're not doing it now, start lifting heavy, even if
Yep.
it's not a complete training program. Do something that is hard to do every day, even if it's just lifting up the bed in your hotel room or just
Right.
trying to push the wall over.
Yep.
Do something that requires most of your strength to do every single day. And I think that does wonders for people if they've never tried it before.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. For me, when I'm on the road, I just have to move, and that helps actually keep me disciplined the night before.
Yeah.
Because one of the things our company we're really big on is a 3-hour fast before you go to bed.
Yep.
And that can be really hard when you're on the road, and because you're going out for dinner and stuff like that. So we always say stay up later then, because
Yep.
if you don't and you lay down, your body's digesting, it's not doing the trash for your brain and all the other things.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit less sleep that's higher quality is actually better. Because if you know what I mean, if you get your REM and your deep, but it was only 5.5 instead of 7, that's better.
Yeah.
What I try to do on the road, I gave up on doing the big workouts and all that. I just try to walk on the treadmill. If I can do that for 20 minutes, it just mentally I'm so much better off. But I like what you said though. You can do body weight resistance stuff in your room, anything to do something. Just be able to say to yourself when you went to bed, I did something.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Good. What else you got? Keep going.
Oh man, you're racking my brain here.
Well,
I think
listen, if you
I think
manage,
that's yeah. I think that's most of my protocol. I mean, it's high protein, it's planning ahead, and
yep,
it's making sure you move, and it's making sure you get sunlight. In my daily life, if I have the perfect day, which rarely happens, but when I do, I really like to run. I'm a runner. I think that the benefits of running are there's so many of them that are hard to get from other cardio workouts. So I love to run. I think that everyone should do strength training of some sort. And if you don't know what you're doing, get a trainer or get someone at the gym to help you out. There's a gym on every street corner now. And I also personally, I box, like I'm an amateur boxer. So I find it's hard to get a cardio workout as good as something that is in the combat sports sort of realm.
sure. Oh yeah, because it's total body.
Yeah. But again, it's hard to do if you're on the road, right? I mean, it's hard to just drop into a boxing gym if you've never been there before and work out and pick it up. So not everybody's going to do that. But I think the key is mixing up cardio and strength training, and don't think that one is the catch-all cure. Just being able to run 10 miles in under an hour and 20 minutes or something like that is not going to save you from every disease that's out there, and it's not going to be the cure for everything else you do wrong. It's about balance, it's about mixture, and overall, the end of the day, it's about moving more. You
I
just want to
agree.
move more.
And also think pacing and balance.
Yeah.
You're not a college athlete anymore. You're middle-aged, or say 35 to 55 years old. Just move every day, for 15 to 20 minutes. Really 20 to 25 is ideal.
Yeah.
But we tell our clients, just walk, literally walk briskly. There's all kinds of research that's just as good as being a runner for basic health. Harvard has like a 45-year retrospective study on 200,000 healthcare workers that support that.
Right.
So yeah, no, I think you have a good plan. There's something I would encourage you to think about with your own audience. Two things. One is we have had a lot of success with the Aura Ring. Because when you quantify sleep, it starts to change your behaviors. And we see it consistently with our clients. Like they're on the road and the things that they've done for years, they see it and their sleep just gets destroyed. And when they stop having the beer with the burger, but maybe they just have the burger and fries with water, wow, I sleep a lot better.
Right.
And the other one is a big one for people who travel, because usually when you travel, somebody's investing and sending you all over somewhere because you're good and they pay you more. And so that means you're a high producer, and so you put more stress on yourself than the average person. And so there is a tremendous amount of research around improving heart rate variability, which the Aura Ring measures. And the primary doorway to doing that initially, it's also all the things you talked about here. It's one of those things where it's 7 things, not one. But the doorway, the gateway that we've seen time and again for 5 years, and I've seen in my own life, is diaphragmatic breathing. And getting people who are on the road, to get 10 to 20 minutes a day of that deep diaphragmatic breathing, where they, what we do, because most people that we work with, they don't need Wim Hof type breathing. All right. That's cool, but 1% are going to do that. All right. What everybody will do is breathe in for 3 or 4 seconds and breathe out for 5 or 6. That elongated exhale activates something called the parasympathetic side of your autonomic nervous system. That brings you back into balance, and that'll help your sleep. That'll help your hormone regulation. I mean, it helps amazing different things. And so that's a hack that I'll do. So I've traveled to 44 countries. I have a microloan organization I started years ago that I'm going to Indonesia in January. And when I go on a trip like that, I will breathe for an hour and a half a day, because it upregulates your immune function while you're doing it. And it helps me recover on the road. So that would be something. And, one of my friends is a neuropsychologist. He works with pro athletes, and he always says, he doesn't believe in the whole thing of set your body to where you're going. He said, your body, just give it more sleep. So instead of working on the plane, sleep if you can.
It's a very good point. And also to that, it kind of ties into your not eating, 3 hours before bed as well. But I often find that people, not just on the road, people overeat in general. Right. And even the most fit, I mean, like you look at a Michael Phelps type of athlete, right, where he's, absolutely shredded and looks like not an ounce of fat on his body. I mean, he's still riding probably 7-8% body fat. So he's still got, if he didn't eat at all, probably 20 pounds worth of energy that he can burn in a fasted state. I've rarely met anyone who's like, I don't think you could go a day without food. And so when you're talking about upregulating your immune system, try eating less as well. I think that's a big thing. If you're traveling overseas, you don't have to have 3 meals that day. You could probably get away with a protein shake and call it a day, right?
Or 2 meals on an airplane where you never move for 10 hours.
Exactly. And that's a big, I think, hack as well. And it's interesting you say the breathing exercises. I do meditate, and I tend to do it in my steam room. I have like a portable steam room that it just fits me. Right. And that's my time to do that breathing exercises and meditation. And I really like the benefits of that. And I like the feeling of being able to sort of sweat everything out once a day. But it's harder to do on the road. Right. I highly, highly suggest to anyone who is really taking this seriously, their sleep, their health, their nutrition, just cut out alcohol altogether.
I agree.
No amount of alcohol is going to help you. It's fun and it's great in social situations, and I really enjoyed it for a very long time. But if you really want to optimize your health, there's no amount of alcohol that helps.
No, it doesn't. And you don't need it to relax. It actually doesn't actually relax you, and it impairs your sleep. You basically eradicate your deep and REM sleep, and so you have a whole night of light sleep. So then you wake up the next day.
Exactly.
You're not rested, and replace it with breathing. You know what I mean? Meditating. That'll get you sleepy if you do it. Like, it only takes about 4 or 5 minutes, and if it's 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, you struggle to stay awake.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of people that I talk to assume that, wow, if I'm only having a beer with dinner, I'm not getting intoxicated. I'm not, well, yeah, but then, 5 hours later, you're waking up in the middle of the night. You've had
Right.
terrible REM sleep.
Yep.
And and then especially if you do that every day because you're on the road, you're going to a business dinner every single night. You think it's only one beer, but you haven't slept well in weeks, right?
Right.
That's one of the single biggest things I think that traveling professionals can do easily to improve a
Yes.
lot of aspects is just cut out the alcohol. Just say no more,
No
and
more. But
things will
the
change very
problem is
quickly.
if they had a long day and
Yeah,
it was somewhat successful, they'll like, oh, I'm just going to celebrate. It's like a little reward, and you got
yeah,
to replace it. And that's
yeah.
why the ring is so important, because you can't ignore it. The data, it
Mhm.
shows. And so like right now, I rarely ever have a drink because I got tired of my ring telling me, yeah, you did it again, you idiot.
Right?
It's never going to work,
Yeah,
And so I'm pretty much out of that world, except once in a while I just choose to suffer, if I'm
yeah.
on vacation or something.
Of course. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so
we don't have to be completely abstinent or monks out there by any means. But on a day-to-day basis, it's if you really want to take it seriously, it's not worth having that beer at dinner. It's just not.
so Rob, obviously you have a business where you're helping people do this, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you have a coaching program? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so I do this basically one-on-one with a lot of people. It's not my main focus because obviously my career in healthcare takes up a lot of my time. But absolutely, I help people out whenever I can, coaching them basically on it's more mindset shifts than anything
Yep.
because you can take all the supplements you want in the world and you can try all the different hacks in the world, but really at the end of the day, it's about changing your mindset to thinking about the ideal feeling and the ideal future for yourself.
Yep.
And what choices am I making to align with that rather than trying to pick things out of the air that'll fix problems, right? We're not going to fix problems if we take one-off solutions. It's about changing our entire sort of outlook on things. So that's kind of the way I approach it.
Yep. I like it. You're basically resetting their why, and then their behavior has to follow. I mean,
Yeah.
people want, it's like, I'm not judging anyone that takes one of the GLP-1s, but everybody's looking for the quick hit and the shot, and
Yeah.
enduring sustainable health optimization where, I'm 60 now and I started making these choices 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm able to, like this morning, my daughter wasn't feeling good. I walked across the street because she lives across the street from us, and I was able to play on the floor with her 2-year-old.
Right.
And I have no problem doing it. I have the flexibility and the energy and everything. And
Yeah.
so now I'm reaping the benefits of those decisions from 10 years ago, but none of it was easy. It's all been behavior change. And so that's what you're really talking about. So how do they get a hold of you, Rob?
Well, you can find me typically Instagram is a great way to find me. I'm at RJ Crate. You can reach out on our YouTube channel for our show as well. That's called the Road Coach Podcast. So that's just youtube.com/at the Road Coach Podcast. Find me anytime there. And if you're looking for our supplement brands or you have any more questions about that, it's called Fight Lab Fitness. And you can email us there at info@fightlab.fitness.
Okay, it's .fitness. Okay, good. Not CA. Okay,
Nope.
good. And it's Rob Crate, ROB Crate, CRATE.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
for Instagram, it's RJ Crate.
Correct.
Right. Okay, good. Well, I know our team will get all that in the show notes. And so, we'll be able to help you, get that message out. So, Rob, thank you for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you as well, Steve. This was a lot of fun.
Steve Adams here from Tiger Medical Institute talking about the True Health Assessment. What if you could safeguard not just your health, but the well-being of your entire family? With the True Health Assessment from Tiger Medical, you can. Our comprehensive blood screening identifies hidden risks before they become major issues. Our elite team of Mayo Clinic trained and naturopathic physicians then create a customized plan to optimize your health for years to come. When you prioritize your wellness, you ensure you can be fully present for the people you love most. Don't let preventable issues cut that time short. For less than the cost of a daily latte, you can gain peace of mind and a clear path to sustained vitality. Protect your future and your family's future with True Health Assessment from Tiger Medical at thetruehealthassessment.com. Again, that's at thetruehealthassessment.com.